State Senator Royce West of Dallas, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Glad to be with you today.
So, you've been to a lot of these Democratic national conventions. What sticks out to you about this one?
I tell you, the excitement around number one, Joe Biden being the ultimate statesman in terms of being the president that will go down in history as getting the job done when he's in office, even though there were some distractors, and then making certain that he passed the baton on to the next generation of leaders. Yeah, there's been a lot of people that's basically said that the Democratic bench is woefully uh, inept. The fact of the matter is we have a deep bench, and we saw that on display last night here at the convention.
And so, what issues are resonating with Texas Democrats?
Well, pretty much the same ones that are resonating with Democrats across the country. Uh, Donald Trump is a serial liar. The fact is, he's a convicted felon. His character is flawed, and any person with any degree of integrity and reasonable would know that. And my Republican friends talk, they won't come out in public and say it, but when we talk in private, they agree with that. And so issues concerning character and integrity are important. And we have never had a presidential candidate that's been worse off than Donald Trump. But in terms of issues, needless to say, the economy is a big issue and inflation. And we're seeing the inflation in this country go down. And yes, there's still more work to be done. Trump wants to fix it with a tax break, with a top 1%, where we want to make certain that we start with the middle class as Democrats and do everything in our power to make certain we have housing, that we deal with not only housing, education, and making certain that freedom and democracy is on the ballot. Women's choice. We're going to have the government pretty much tell women what they can and cannot do. And for people that are listening to this, I'm hoping that it resonates with you. We're talking about Roe versus Wade after 50 years being reversed. And the question is whether or not you want your daughters to have the freedom of choice in terms of making decisions concerning their own body. So those are some of the issues that are important. Civil rights, voting rights, those things have resonated here in Chicago on the first day of this national convention.
And so, talking about the economy, do you think Vice President Harris's prescription is going to work? She called for a ban on price gouging when it comes to food prices. Is that something you agree with, and how effective would that really be?
It kind of, do I agree with it? Yes. Not only on foods, but price gouging on anything and everything. We've seen that in the state of Texas in terms of gas issues, utility issues, things of that nature. We've seen that. And so we should want, regardless of whether you're a Democrat or Republican, to make certain we have laws in place that not only make it illegal, but also we can that are enforceable. And so the question is whether or not she can put in place a federal infrastructure in order to make certain that there's quick response, if you will, when we experience issues concerning food gouging, price gouging as it relates to food in this country. But again, it has to be an infrastructure where you have quick response.
But is that, I mean, some critics say that this is basically the government setting price controls, and that hasn't worked before.
Well, there'll be critics concerning everything. And probably color the shirt that I have on today that you'll have a critic. But I think that when you begin to be in a situation where you're seeing prices going up and price gouging occurring, you want to make certain that you're able to uh, adjust and make certain we have something in place in order to prevent it. And so I'm for that, and I don't see it as quote unquote the government setting prices. That's ludicrous. That won't happen in America.
So let me ask you, you brought up abortion and reproductive rights. How much of an issue will that be in Texas, do you think, not only in the presidential campaign, but in the U.S. Senate race?
I think that it's going to be an issue. Let me tell you why. You're beginning in Texas, what I'm seeing when I travel across the state, more and more conversations, not just by Democrats, but by independents and moderate Republicans that are just incensed by the fact that the government can tell them how to uh, handle their reproductive rights and also their, you know, medical treatments. And so I think that women, you're going to see them come out, and that will be one of the most single focus issues that they will vote on. And if they do that, then they'll be voting for Democrats.
You run statewide before, and I'm wondering, has Congressman Allred, who's now running against Senator Cruz, has he reached out to you and asked for any advice?
Sure, yeah, he's from the very beginning he has. And
And
my advice,
what
make
did he
certain my
what
advice was go to places where you're really not known, and make certain you let people know who you are and what you stand for. And I think that's exactly what he's doing. And then make certain that before it's all said and done, that you come back home to the base and energize the base to turn out to vote. I think he's not going to have a hard problem doing that, given that we have VP Harris and Waltz on the tickets, and they'll be doing that and energizing people in the state of Texas to vote.
so you think his campaign's going well?
Well, yes. I mean, in terms of you can always raise more money, okay? And so you've got to make certain that you have the monies in order to do. You know, the Cruz is going to have the money in order to. Um, he'll probably end up outspending Allred, but the fact is that Allred has got to do social media, has got to get on television, and so he'll need additional monies. And to the extent that he can do that, I think he's going to be successful.
Is there excitement behind his campaign?
As far as I know, it is. In terms of the excitement as it relates to the base, he still has to work a little bit harder on the base. But again, I think the base is going to be energized by VP Harris's presidential bid. And so, from that vantage point, I think that that's going to boost his numbers. I want him to make certain that he gets into places where Democrats don't normally go, and make certain citizens know that voters know the difference between his platform and that of Cruz's. And if he does that, I think he's going to be successful.
And let's talk a little bit about the upcoming legislative session. As far as school choice, we've already seen that come back to the Texas Capitol. Governor Abbott told me several weeks ago he thinks he has the votes to pass it, thinks he's actually going to flip some House seats from Democrat to Republican in November. And so I'm wondering, what's your take on this issue, whether school choice, school vouchers, taxpayer-funded education savings accounts will pass?
Well, here's the deal. If he gets his votes, it'll pass. If he doesn't, it won't. As simple as that. The fact is that we should be we're starving our public schools. We had a bunch of money that was left on the table during the last legislative session that should have gone to our schools. It didn't. What, some $4 billion, and now we're seeing a lot of school districts, public school districts, with deficit spending going on and having to dip into their reserve funds because the legislature didn't fund it, and it was basically because the legislature would not pass vouchers. And so, from that vantage point, if he gets his numbers, he'll be able to pass it. Otherwise, he won't.
And do you think that public school funding increases, teacher pay raises will happen this next session?
Yes, I do. I really do think so. He held it hostage last time because of he wasn't able to get his way in terms of the voucher bill. But hopefully, common sense will prevail, and that we will make certain that as a part of our budgetary process, that monies needed by the school districts are in fact allocated.
And last question, what issues are you working on? What are you focused on for next session?
Well, we're still formulating what our priorities are going to be, but I know that I'll be in the middle of the fire and police pension issues in Dallas. We're going to be working with the Dallas Police Department about the use of lasers in terms of whether or not they are quote unquote deadly weapons in terms of how they're used. We'll be continuously working on issues concerning housing and also voter oppression laws. The fact is that we know that some issues that I tackle will be uphill issues, but you've got to tackle. The fact is, you've got to tackle. I'll continue to work on issues concerning health and human services and economic development and the issue of DEI. I'm pretty certain that there will be a lot of issues concerning whether the legislature has gone far enough as it relates to banning DEI. but I want to make certain that my colleagues understand the impact of banning those programs on college campuses, and it has been severe impact. So I'll be dealing with a culture, those types of issues, and probably several more. Since what the governor has already told us we're going to be there all summer, so I'm kind of buckling down, taking my helmet and making certain that I get that strapped up and ready to go.
So you're preparing for another full summer?
That's what the governor said.
Okay. Let me ask one follow-up and then I'll let you go. And I appreciate it. And that was about the lasers, talking with the police department. Talk to me a little bit about that. Is that lasers being used by the police or lasers being aimed at the police?
If I said lasers, I meant tasers.
Tasers. Okay. All right. Well, you may have said tasers. I just heard it wrong. So I got you. And what's the issue about that?
Well, whether or not it needs to be per se a deadly weapon. Okay. And so I'm going to be talking with all parties that will be impacted by that to see whether or not it should continuously be classified as a deadly weapon. And so we've already started conversations with staff. And so we're going to be working on that during this coming legislative session.
State Senator Royce West of Dallas joining us from Chicago. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
My pleasure, Jack.